Oh, we are live. Okay.
Hey.
Excellent.
Bears beats Battlestar Galactica.
You merely adopted the dark. I was born in it.
Sounds like somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
Bazinga.
2 in the box.
Ready to go.
We be fast.
They be slow.
Cool.
Hello and welcome to Mt.Geekmore, your favorite podcast where a group of friends sit around, argue, debate, and discuss the Mount Rushmore of a certain topic. As you can tell, if you've, I guess if you're looking at your listening device, if you're watching live, you know, you may just now be learning. But we are doing the Mount Rushmore.
What an awful way to get into a podcast. Like, I just clicked on this thing. I don't know what it's about. But,
no idea.
Read your device, bro.
So it's I found a place to like put it in a description. It's like up there on my screen. But anyway, we are doing the worst novel to movie adaptations here at Mount Geek, where we do occasionally do one where we just like to discuss things that are shit. These are always good because a lot of these, more so than the great ones, these are often far more opinion driven, and I can see this one being kind of testy at some points. But we'll get into it. With me tonight, we've got David Ulloa.
Howdy.
Mike Mercadal.
That's me.
That's him. And first time on the show, and not only podcast family member, but actual blood relative of a host, we've got Lisa Ulloa.
Hi.
And so what we do is we go around the horn. We talk about each pick. We go 4-1. We've got some honorable mentions thrown in there. You guys have listened before. You know how it works. We'll see how Lisa can go with it. But before we get started, I do want to ask everybody, how did you make your list? What makes a bad novel to movie adaptation in your opinion? We're going to start with Dave.
There were a couple that came to me right away. My number one came to me, like, I have thought about how bad an adaptation this is from the moment I read the book, because I kind of did it in reverse for that one. But for the rest of these, they kind of just came to me right away. And then, you know, I saw a couple lists and I was like, oh yeah, that one's pretty bad. This other one's pretty bad. But I kind of just went with the ones that my gut told me. And my gut does speak to me often. And my gut told me, hey, you know what? These are the absolute worst. They're just shit.
Fair enough. All right, Mike.
This was actually tough for me because I do the reverse. I watch the movie, and then if I like it, I will read the book. So the movie is like a director's cut, like a bonus, like the book gives me more detail to the thing I've already seen. So it was hard because a lot of the books that I've read that are movie adaptations were good.
Because you wouldn't have read the book if the movie was garbage.
Exactly.
Right.
So a two on this list are ones that I just stumbled on, that I read, that I accidentally read first, and then the other ones were, once I read the book, I was like, oh, wait a minute, what? You know, like where it's like, oh, okay, what? You know, like I was genuinely like confused by it. And then we'll get to the picks as we get to them, because they're both. It wasn't like a theme. It was also, I had to think about every book I've ever read, and is there a movie to it? And have I seen the movie? It's like a weird, like combo of things had to happen.
Cut to Mike just staring at a bookshelf, like, oh wait, that was a movie. No, I like that one.
I'm not kidding. 100% that happened. I went back to my bookshelf and I was like, which of these is okay? There's that one. I was like, which of these are bad? And I was like. And then I had to do some Googling, and then I had to like let my memories be refreshed by what I Googled. And then I was like, oh yeah, that was garbage. Like, oh yeah, that's right.
All right, Lisa, how'd you come up with your 4?
So there were 2 that came to mind right away. The moment Dave called me and was like, this is the topic, I was like, got it, 100%. And then, similar to Mike, I went to my bookcase and was like, read that, it's a movie, liked it, read that, terrible movie. And so I kind of just worked that way, made myself a little list, and then just kind of went from there. So yeah, for me, it was more like, did the movie do the book justice? So was it about like, because it might have been a good movie, but it did absolutely no justice to the message of the book. So that's kind of where I went with that.
I
Good
did
point.
something similar. Except when I went to narrow down to 4, one of the big things I did was I eliminated anything that may be a bad adaptation. But if I enjoyed the movie, I was like, well, it couldn't have been. I was looking for movies that I don't like as well. Like, don't say anything if it's on your list. The Shining is not a good adaptation of the novel. But
Awful.
I like The Shining a lot. So I
Absolutely.
couldn't bring myself to put The Shining on my list because I really like that movie. So that if that gives you any gauge for kind of how I went about it, I picked ones where I didn't like the movie. And the reason I didn't like the movie was because, a lot like Lisa said, the message or the sentimentality of the book was lost when it was put onto the screen because of changes that they made. So, all right, now we know everybody's lists were made. I suppose we should get into our number 4s.
With the 4th pick.
Number 4. Round 4.
I'm in no mood for your wives' crack. Let's get it on.
All right, Dave, what's your number 4, man?
I think I might call an audible right now.
Whoa,
Okay.
already out the gate.
Yeah, out the gate. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna do it only because I consider it to be a more serious work of fiction. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna do it. All right, so my number 4 is Fahrenheit 451.
Thought about this one.
Yeah.
And it could be either the newer version with Michael B. Jordan or the original 1960s version with Julie Christie, and I can't remember the name of that German actor. But it was directed by Francois Truffaut, so like he's like a legitimate director, and it was just weird.
Yeah.
And you have like
Which is hard to do when you start with Ray Bradbury.
You're starting with Bradbury, like it's already really fucking weird. And the thing is that the book itself is it has such a almost like very simple story. Like it all takes place over the course of just a couple of weeks. There's not really much to it except that like it really makes you think about like what's important in life and what's worth fighting for. And I feel like the movie completely loses sight of that. The original film, I think, captures the essence of the novel a little better, but it gets lost in that sort of like fanciful sci-fi world that they try to create. And it does kind of stick a little closely to the novel in a lot of ways, but it just, I don't know, there's something off about it. And then that new version that HBO did was, I don't know what that was, but it was not Fahrenheit 451.
Nope.
I've never read this book, but someone just said to watch Equilibrium instead.
Yes.
You know, Equilibrium.
If you're gonna watch a movie version of Fahrenheit 451, Equilibrium is the superior version.
Absolutely.
Right.
Equilibrium,
Plus it has
Logan's
gun
Run.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've read one of these or seen one of these dystopian future books or movies, you know, you've kind of seen them all. It's always about, you know, the man's trying to hold you down and stopping you from feeling, and you know, kind of where we are today, you know. But
take these pills so you don't feel.
Yeah, you know, it'll fix your dick, but it'll turn you into an asshole. So that's kind of what the message of the book is.
I too am doing the math, Mike.
I had to. Okay.
I got it.
Yeah.
All right,
So,
so,
I mean, it's one of those books. It's a quick read. You can read it in an afternoon if you've got nothing to do, and yet
It's a
somehow
no-fun.
every time you read it, and it's one of those books that I teach because I'm a high school literature teacher. You know, every time I teach it, I find something new to point out to the students, and the students point out to me, and it's so layered for like 150 pages. There's so much to it, and yet these movies consistently miss the mark, you know. Like focus on just one damn thing, and not even that.
Yeah, I purposely didn't put that on my list, Dave, because I knew you would. I know you so well, man.
Well, I'm glad that I subbed out my previous number 4 for this.
All right, so we got Fahrenheit 451. What's your number 4, Mike?
I don't know the order. kind of playing loose with the order, so we're building as we go. Because I want to say, okay, the Da Vinci Code is my number 4.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, now here's the thing. I've read all of the Dan Brown books the way I eat candy. Like, or you know how like when you're eating potato chips and your brain says this tastes bad, but your mouth is like, keep putting them in here.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Right? Like, I've read all of even like Digital Fortress, the one that's not the the Robert Langdon. I've read Inferno and with the one with the Masons. I've read all of them. The Lost Symbol. I've read all of them, and they all have a very specific way of being fed to you. You know what I mean? Like it's like, hey, here's a science thing, and then here's an old thing. And am I right? Like that's literally what all of those.
I actually haven't read them. I've only watched. I've watched Inferno and Da Vinci Code. Did they do Lost Symbol as a movie?
No, but it's going to be a TV show, which I am more curious about because they have more time to. Because basically they're written like TV
more time
shows.
To develop the worst one in the series.
I know. I mean, well,
from the first chapter, I was like, "That's what it is," and and at the end, I was like, "Yeah, I called it." Yeah, and I was fucking sick. Also, I had the flu, and I was still able to figure that shit out.
So here's the thing in the movie. I love Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is my favorite actor, and I used to play a game on one of my old podcasts called the 6 Degrees of the. We used to have a 6 Degrees. My friend would do The Simpsons, and I would do Tom Hanks. Whatever you bring up, I could equate it to a Tom Hanks experience. I love the guy, and he's fine in this movie. Ian McKellen is fine in this movie, but it's the book had this weird energy to it that the movie kind of made more obvious how bland it was. You know what I mean? Like the book was like, as you're reading it, you're like, oh yeah, okay, because of the way that the chapter's structured, it was always like every chapter is a cliffhanger. Every
like a
single
one book.
Yeah, it's straight up like, and then chapter 4, and then what's gonna happen, and then it's like calling cut. It's like the way scenes are edited in a TV show, which I ironically think the TV show will do a better representation of it. But there was so much of that like force feeding you symbolism in the book that in the movie the symbols kind of got lost, and I'm like, yo, that's the whole point of this guy.
Right.
You know
like
what I mean? The
thing.
whole
what he
point
does,
is subtext of symbols, and you can't do it in a movie form where it doesn't like it's not Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones is questing through ruins. That's very visual. Showing someone, like having a guy sit there and explain symbols to you and be like, oh, the chalice and the, you know, like it's like it's not as compelling. So like it just revealed to me just how mid it all was.
All right.
So that's why that's my number 4.
So
there's other one. You'll see my list. Once you see my list, you'll be like, well, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. All right, what you got for number 4, Lisa?
The Girl on the Train.
Yeah, this was one I was so back and forth with.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you and I have the same thoughts on it. I felt like essentially the story of this one, I don't know if any of you saw the movie or whatever. It's this girl that's on a train, witnesses a murder while she's on the train, and it's her slowly unraveling as she tries to kind of figure out what's going on. The book, the main character is insufferable. I hated her. She was like, there was no redeemable quality to her. And in the movie, they get Emily Blunt to play her, which is phenomenal. Like, you can't do wrong, you know? But I felt like a lot of her backstory in the movie doesn't get portrayed. So you don't really know why she is such a hot mess, you know? You're just like, she's a mess, you know? And then, you know, they softened characters that should have been, you know, worse. So like the person that essentially kind of like is the husband of the girl that was murdered, he was like abusive in the book, physically, mentally, like all of these things. And in the movie, he's just like, well, he's a bad guy, you know?
Yeah, so he was just kind of a dick.
Right. And I was like, all right, well, that's cool.
Just
but like,
you're a bad guy does
not make you a bad guy.
Thanks, Satan.
So
now, I've not experienced this story in any format. And I'm sorry.
I'm looking at the comments.
Yeah.
It happens every time. These fucking Russians, man.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, yes, I forgot
They're
I forgot that I control that.
you have to take they're big girl on the train fans.
Yeah.
It's like as soon as you say the word girl, or what happens more often when we reference pornography on here, it's like there's some bot that's like, oh, they said dick. Watch this.
It's my own fault.
but-
I spoke in Zangief's accent, and they were like, "Yes, someone is
Just one
calling
of ours
Russia to
now."
come over. Leave Ukrainian front. Come here. Advertise. Jerk off. Ad. Wet girls are here.
You're giving them more ammo. You're triggering more bots as we speak.
There it is.
There they go.
We did it.
Oh my god.
For those of you confused, watch us live. So you
Yeah.
can
It's a full-time
see this
job.
I'm sorry,
It's
Lisa.
unraveling.
I'm
Yes.
sorry these bots interrupted you. What I was going to ask is, in these, I don't know if you've seen on Netflix the girl
Oh, yeah.
in the window,
The
on
woman
across
in the
street.
window.
Yeah,
Oh, the one with Good Place Girl on it.
yeah,
in
with
it.
Kristen.
Well, no,
Bell.
that's like a spoof off of it. So the girl in the house across from the woman in the window or something like that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a spoof off of
Oh,
it. It's
with
very
Kristen
satire. Yeah,
Yes,
she's
thank
great.
you, Kristen Bell.
Okay,
I couldn't think
now-
of her name.
Yeah.
Dak Shepard's wife is where I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
with that.
and but the story, it's supposed to be a spin-off on all of those.
Yeah.
Woman witnesses murder and nobody he believes her. Alex Stein is wait. I'm gonna
Alex
click it.
Stein is
Don't
sad
click
that
it,
I blocked
Stein.
the porn link.
But is this, which is formulaic, the book or the movie?
Well, what
Well, I'm
the
asking
reason-
Lisa,
Oh,
actually.
sorry. Yeah.
Oh,
No.
damn.
No, it was. It was
It's
your
her
pick. It was
pick.
your pick.
I mean, I don't know. It's it was the first one that I read of it. So like for me, it was the beginning of it, you know? So I feel like I can't really, I was kind of prejudiced to say like, yeah, it was the first one. So it was like, the initial, that was the formula for me, and then all the other ones were kind of like, they were spoofing off of it, but so it's from the same people that did Gone Girl, which is phenomenal as
Yeah.
well. So that one is great. So you would think, it would translate as well, but it just, it didn't. And I don't know, Debona, if you feel the same way,
Well,
but
no. What bothered me the most about Girl on the Train was it took a lot of things that were subtly complex,
Yes.
for lack of anything better to say in the book, and boiled them down to like murder mystery cliches. And
Yeah.
the movie became very tropey, whereas the book was very subtle in the way that they did things. And
yes.
so the what made the book so good was that subtlety, was watching her slowly lose it. And then in the movie, it's just like, and now she did this because she's crazy.
Right.
Mm.
And also that sense of how she figures out the murder is a slow build. Like that is phenomenal. And in the movie, it's just kind of like, which I get, you've got a limited time, but it was just kind of like, oh, wait, I figured it out,
Yeah.
And it was like, no, there was this suspensefulness about it. So just didn't do it justice at all.
All right. So we got The Girl on the Train. My number 4 is one that I have been met with a lot of criticism and hate when I've mentioned this out loud, but I am putting it on my list because I'm just not a fan of the movie. My number 4 is The Lovely Bones. The Lovely Bones was visually a beautiful movie. And I could assume that there's probably a large portion of people who read The Lovely Bones and the things about the movie that they changed didn't bother them. But to me, reading The Lovely Bones made watching the movie an impossibility. Like it took me 3 times to get through the movie because, and like I said, it's a very personal thing, but some of the things that made the book so freakishly good were either tamped out completely or watered down. The things that I liked. When you watch the movie, The Lovely Bones, we got a comment here from Alina Garcia Vicente, who says she loved them both. So, that's what I run across a lot. But in the movie, they immediately, it's like, okay, the girl's like alive, and then you see her die, and then everything happens. In the book, she's dead when it starts. But you don't know that. You're trying to figure out, like at first, like why she's living this weird, like fanciful life, and just some of the chronology of the way that that the book worked, where it was all over the place. didn't come true in the movie, and it really bothered me. And like, also, the movie takes place over the course of maybe 18 months, but the book is a much longer time. So you watch some of the characters grow and age and go through some things that they didn't do in the movie because it doesn't span the same amount of time. And they're all little nitpicky things, but it all added up to this thing where it's like, it feels like all of the things I really liked about this movie just got completely left out. Oh, Jesus Christ.
I'm sorry. I tried to.
Stein, we love you so much. Your
Stein.
President Smith's Lovely Bones. Here comes more porn spam.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So, but anyway, so it just didn't, I don't know. I think it was one where, honestly, maybe now, years removed, if I were to go back to it, I wouldn't have some of the same issues. But it was going to be such a huge undertaking in my mind that it just didn't live up to what I wanted to see out of a Lovely Bones movie, and so that's why it made my list. But why it is at number 4.
Solid.
Anybody else read that one?
I only saw the movie
Oh,
and
okay.
Stanley Tucci's fake everything, wig and teeth.
Yeah, and like I said, a lot of people really like both, and more power to you. It was just one. It just, I don't know. It just hit all the sour notes for me.
You know, it's something I don't think we discussed in the opening about how we built our mount, but like the requirements or what are your expectations of a book adaptation are so dramatically influenced by the promotion of the film.
Yeah.
Because there's some movies where they promote it as inspired by or based on, and then they show the trailer and it's like, like they're very clearly telling you,
like the Bourne movies.
Whatever. I mean, there's a bunch of different things, but and then also there's always that element that the movie will never have the depth of content that the book has, because the book has a much easier time giving exposition, because that's literally what the whole book is telling you the story.
You don't have to edit yourself for feature film length, right?
Exactly.
You don't have to keep it under 3 hours, over 2 hours. You know, if it's 600 pages, it's 600 pages. You know, that's why, like, one of my all-time favorite books is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And if you read that and you watch Blade Runner, like, I love the original Blade Runner, but Blade Runner covers a fraction.
Yeah.
I was going to say that earlier when we were talking
However, like, I can't say that it's a bad adaptation, because what it does focus on is really good and fairly accurate to what it focuses on. Right. And they kind of cover some of the other stuff, you know, the environmental stuff in the sequel. You know, granted, it came 30 years later, but you know, it was still good.
Happens.
You know.
All right.
I'm a big supporter of 2049.
I love that movie. Yeah.
At number 4, we've got Fahrenheit 451, The Da Vinci Code, The Girl on the Train, and The Lovely Bones. That's going to take us to our number 3.
Round 3.
3 is a magic number. Yes, it is.
All right, Dave, number 3, what you got, man?
I'm actually going to do a little bit of a shuffle here, and I'm moving my number 3 up to number 2. Yeah, it is fluid over here. Hey. All right, just going with the flow. And so my number 3 is going to be The Giver.
Ooh, you got to table it, brother.
Okay.
Ooh, there we go.
The Giver getting tabled. All right, number 3, Mike.
My number 3 is tricky because the film was not the part that I thought was the problem, because it covered more than one. I'm going to say Queen of the Damned. Because it was the vampire Lestat and Queen of the Damned in one movie, and in my mind I'm like, that first of all, the movie is if you are not a new metal fan and you do not love Korn the band, that movie is atrocious. And
dude, I still like Korn to an extent, and I still think the movie's atrocious.
No. I have been to multiple Korn concerts. I have seen them. I own multiple Korn albums. The movie is oddly, how do I put it? The movie, I feel like, was trying. It was like, okay, you remember Daredevil, the movie in 2003 with Ben Affleck? Mm-hmm. It's like that, You know what I'm trying? It was like they tried to make that into the Queen of the Damned. I don't know what. And Aaliyah is in it. Aaliyah looking amazing. And she's doing like the whole thing. Amazing. Everything's great. Everything visually was of the era, solid, right? I didn't want it to be of the era. It did not need to be a Hot Topic 90s fucking spectacle. It didn't have to be that. It was very specifically written about a specific time, and they should have just shown that time. They're vampires. They can be alive whenever. I think if they would make it now, like if they made a Vampire Lestat movie now, it could be a totally 80s retro thing that would have lived in a different space in what it was trying to do, because that's when it takes place, you know, or at the very least the modern elements were in the 80s in terms of like where you could now tell it almost as like a meta period piece, you know, instead of it being like trying to make it modern, which dates it so much.
Yes.
Like if you try to watch it now, you're like, oh boy, how much Static X do we have to listen to in this soundtrack?
All of the Static.
It was like every one of those around that era. Every movie was a soundtrack movie, and every visual effects was darkened and gritty so that you couldn't see this shitty CGI, and like they all looked like Daredevil or Spawn 1997.
Yes.
They all looked like that weird computer because they hadn't been lighting and all that shit hadn't been perfected yet in CGI. So they were trying to do too much.
The only reason I didn't pick that one. The only reason I didn't pick that one is because of what you said, because it was the combination of two books, and I was like, that's just too much. Like there was.
I had to bring up how bad it was.
You're condensing 1,000 pages of really great literature into an hour and 40 minutes of storytelling. Like that's not enough time to cover Queen of the Damned or the Vampire Lestat by itself.
His origin was spectacular in the book, and also showcasing I loved in the book the idea of the church infiltrating into the minds of people, of vampires, the idea that they are demonic when they were not. Like the church made them. That's why you get all these stories about like these dirty vampires living in filth and blah 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 blah. And there's that like dichotomy between like the Vampire Lestat, you know, from Interview with the Vampire, versus like in the movie anyway. The movie Interview with the Vampire I like a lot.
Yeah.
But it shows him as like this foppish, rich person, you know, of the upper class and tasting, you know, royal blood and loving that and all that stuff. And then they show this other class of vampire that has been like demonized by the church, that kind of like self-loathing that they get because they feel like they're evil. And that would have been so much more interesting than fucking what they showed. If they would have done the two separate movies.
We do see some of that in Interview of the Vampire with Lestat. We see that fall there, and I mean, it only serves the purpose of showing, you know, how different,
how long he lived, though, like how he survived. That was what that was. But what I'm getting at is there was enough in Vampire Lestat that they could have just done that. They should have. It was just. Ugh.
Yeah,
it was disappointing.
All right, so we got Queen of the Damned. Lisa, what's your number 3?
So this one is from a series where they only made the first movie because the rest were so terrible.
Go ahead. I just have a feeling I'm about to table.
The Mortal Instruments.
Oh, no. Okay, carry on.
All right. So it was the first book for the Mortal Instruments. It was City of Bones. The books were pretty fun. It had like that very it was the whole like angel demons kind of thing. So Mike, you would kind of totally like that stuff. And so it was like really just very, I don't know, very, what's the word? Fantasy like. Sorry. It's very fantasy like. And there's this whole aspect of, you know, there's these two people that, spoiler alert, end up being siblings. That is totally a huge plot point. It gets completely revealed in the first one, and it's something that builds to it. They sped things up that are supposed to happen in the second book. Like the main character is supposed to be able to do these like warding signs and stuff like that. She doesn't actually do them until the second one, does them in the first one. It doesn't actually build anything of it. They just revealed like a lot of key things that are crucial to the plot early on. It was so bad they never made any of the other ones. They ended up doing I think it was a show on Freeform. They did a whole series of it. Yeah. And so I heard, never watched it, but I heard that the first season was actually kind of in line with the books. But then after that, they just kind of went rogue also. So it just really didn't do the books justice.
I remember seeing the trailer for the movie because I never read the book, but I remember seeing the trailer for the movie and thinking, man, this looks really cool.
Yeah.
And
I had that I'm looking at it to refresh my memory of how quickly that shit was launched out of my brain.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've heard of it. And I look and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, that's right. I
Yeah,
remember
like,
wanting to see this.
As quickly as I thought that was cool, I started hearing everyone say, "Don't watch this movie."
It was garbage.
I was like, "Oh,
yeah,
okay," and I never got around to it.
I remember seeing the trailer for it. It came out at there was this very short-lived moment where like a steampunk aesthetic was really cool in movies, and I'm a huge steampunk fan. Like I'll read Jules Verne, every year for the rest of my life. I love steampunk. So like there was this moment where that aesthetic was big in things, even though like the actual complexities of steampunk were never explored in any of those things. And so I remember seeing the trailer and being like, oh shit, yeah, like I can't wait to watch this. And then it was like, wait, where'd it go?
Went back as quickly as it came. Yeah. It was terrible. And it's unfortunate because like it's one of those young adult books. So like totally, read it. Actually, I don't even remember when I read it, but I read it when it originally came out. And so it had like this great cult following and then nothing. So it was just terrible.
So we've got City of Bone or City of Bones?
City of Bones.
City of Bones.
See, I get that confused. So this is what I was thinking. Mortal Engines.
Yes.
There was also
maybe that's the one I'm thinking of with the steampunk aesthetic, like within the
trailers very
and stuff.
The Rolling
aesthetic.
Cities.
That's
the one I'm thinking of.
Different
Maybe
one.
I know exactly Dick all
I literally
about
just
City of Bones.
Yeah. I literally just Googled Rolling Cities movie because I was trying to remember what it was. But so I thought so. Yeah, I've heard the Mortal Instruments because I remember there being like a city underground or something like that. And then the Rolling Cities movie, the Mortal Engines, was supposed to be like this. I went to Comic-Con one year and they were like promoting the shit out of it. And that's another one where it was like,
yeah, I never saw it because I heard that one was bad.
Yeah, that may be the one I was thinking of. All right, City of Bones. My number 3 is, I didn't mention it when I built my list because there was only one author that this really applied to, but I did create a rule that was like, I can only pick one from a particular author, but it was just because of the author of this particular book. My number 3 is Congo.
Ooh, I love Congo.
That's how I feel about it.
Okay, well, like there are a couple of really bad Michael Crichton adaptations, right? Like I could have put Sphere on here as well, but I at least kind of enjoyed the movie Sphere. Congo was a couple of things. One, it was a very tense and dark book that just wasn't going to translate to the big screen well. And 2, it was limited by when it came out. Like to have an art, now we've seen the Planet of the Apes remakes, and we know that there can be armies of realistic looking gorillas that murder people, and we buy it. When this came out in 95, I believe is when Congo came out,
like that,
that it wasn't there. Right. So what we ended up getting was nowhere near as tense. It was nowhere near as brutal as what Michael Crichton put down. And like, I ended up not really caring that much about Amy, which was really disappointing to me. Like, there was just something that didn't translate well about this one. And it was tough for me because I love the book Congo. And I honestly think it's the scariest Michael Crichton book. Like, just kind of thinking off the top of my head right now, maybe Andromeda Strain, but
yeah, I was going to say,
Andromeda Strain
might be that.
Andromeda Strain is terrifying. Yeah, so maybe second scary.
In modern context, Andromeda Strain is mad scary.
Yeah, true enough. Yeah, but it just didn't translate to the big screen. It looked goofy. I was never as scared as I was reading the book. The depths of brutality in the things that these gorillas did to people when you were reading Congo, I knew they weren't going to put on the big screen, but I hoped that they would, and they didn't. It just didn't play out. And again, so often when you read the book first, especially if you've read the book well before the movie comes out, so you've had time to build the expectation. It's like, oh man, I love that book. I can't wait for the movie. It just wasn't there for me. Like when I watched Congo, it just fell short. It felt goofy, which is not a feeling I ever got while reading Congo, and that really bothered me. So
You just reminded me of something I would have put on the list, but I it's honorable mention.
Okay, there we go. So we'll toss it honorable mention. All right, so number 3s, we had The Giver, Queen of the Damned, City of Bones, and Congo. Let's get to our number 2s.
Round 2.
Dose, the sequel to Uno.
All right, Dave, the Deuce, let me have it.
You know, the more I think about this, the more I want to bump this one that was number 3 up to number 1. But the only reason why I'm not going to is because of how long I have loved number 1.
Fair.
So my number 3 is number 2, original number 3 is going to be The Great Gatsby.
I knew you would do
the modern
it.
one, the new Great Gatsby.
This is one that I moved because, yes, it's a terrible adaptation, but I did kind of dig the movie.
So
Right.
Here's the thing: is that there has never, despite what anyone tells you, there has never been a good adaptation of The Great Gatsby.
Agreed.
All right, despite what your English teacher put on for you in class, you know that Robert Redford version.
Redford one.
All right, I love Robert Redford. All right, he's a really good Gatsby, and Sam Waterston is a really good Nick Carraway, right? And Mia Farrow is a far superior Daisy. Okay, so but I'm not even talking about the fact that one is possibly better than the Baz Luhrmann one, because none of that matters. No movie will ever capture the poetry of Fitzgerald's words. It's just one of those things where the story of The Great Gatsby is not one that can be seen, right? Because if Baz Luhrmann, with all of the spectacle that he put on screen, can still not capture the magic, right? Well, and don't get me started on that. And ultimately, that's why my least favorite version of the movie is not even the lost silent film that no one has seen since 1926. Okay, it's the 2013 Baz Luhrmann one, because that oh my God, Neri.
Neri disagrees because Neri says The Great Gatsby book was atrocious. Trolling when he's not even here. God bless you, Neri.
The totally like weird selection of music that's going on there, right? With bringing like modern contemporary like hip hop and throwing that in there. Like, I get what he's going for, what Baz Luhrmann was going for.
Going for being Baz Luhrmann.
but it sucked me right out of the movie. There are some moments that I think he does a really good job of capturing that moment in the novel, but otherwise I think that it's really just like it's garbage. The movie's garbage. I think it's well casted. DiCaprio is great.
Yeah.
I was about to say,
like
didn't you
pick
DiCaprio's Gatsby on your DiCaprio mountain?
Yeah, because I think he does a really good job at portraying Gatsby, and I do think that Tobey Maguire does a good job at portraying Nick Carraway. And I don't think Carey Mulligan is a bad Daisy either. And in fact, I think the best casting in that movie is I always forget her name, but the woman who plays Jordan,
Tobey Maguire.
No,
Yeah.
the Australian actress.
Yeah. I know who you're talking about.
Debicki.
Yeah.
Debicki's her name. Yeah, something Debicki. She was outstanding. She was absolutely spectacular. Neri says, I had an English teacher admit to me that the book sucked, but it was so overhyped that it's taboo to say the truth. Okay, so one person told you this.
No,
and it's
no,
truth?
Neri, go away.
Yeah. Whatever you say, Neri.
I genuinely considered this one, but it ended up falling into what ultimately was what are my honorable mentions, my shining category, which are, it's a bad adaptation, but shit, I like it. So I'm not going to put it on the list because I know that it was a bad adaptation, but there's just something about watching a Baz Luhrmann film, man. He gets me. Like when Baz Luhrmann makes films, I'm like, this is for me.
I've often called a Baz Luhrmann hater, and I don't disagree with that, because I think that he's all style and no substance.
There was a meme going around of what movie or story would you like remade where there's only one human actor and the rest is played by Muppets.
Yes.
And someone said that a fully straight Gatsby adaptation with nothing but Muppets, and all I could think about was how amazing that would be. The sheer suspension of disbelief where you're watching the fucking puppets do the acting. And I love the Muppets. I was so ready for this movie. I would have paid out of my own pocket. I would have kickstarted it if I could.
The pinnacle of that has already been reached, though, with Michael Caine and Muppets in Muppet Christmas Carol.
Michael Caine should have won an Oscar for that fucking movie.
Yes.
Okay.
Carrie. All right. So
we've
got The Great Gatsby. Mike, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is again one of these multiple things. I'm going with The Hobbit.
Oh,
it was like a missed it by that much thing for me.
Ooh.
The Hobbit book is a delightful. It's like How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Great half-hour short tale, tells a fun story. The end. No need to do this. No need to stretch. No need to add Legolas. No need to add like the Hobbit
there is
trilogy.
A need if you want to sell tickets.
The Hobbit trilogy is a perfect example of why I love now the idea that there's limited run series. Why you if you can tell a story, novels would do so much better in the concept of a limited run TV series.
Yeah,
and it's just like so obvious that when they've stretched things out to like make them last forever and to fill more time and to sell more space and whatever the hell they will do, the reasoning behind it is. It reminds me of Lost. Do you remember the show Lost?
Yeah,
every day of my life.
Season 3, somewhere in season 2, Damon Lindelof did an interview that I read. Thank you, Neri.
Neri's here for you with this one.
I'm going to give you a reason why. Damon Lindelof said that he knew how the story was going to end, and he planned for it to originally be like a 4 or 5, like not even 5 seasons, like 4 seasons. And they were ready to, they were leading into the end already. And ABC went, you have to stretch purely for capitalist reasons. Mm-hmm. And he was like, yeah, so we just filled in a bunch of space. And I was like, fuck you.
Beautifully, by the way, filled in a bunch of space beautifully.
But
no,
fuck the idea that you like you're bloating a story that you had envisioned already. Like you had a beginning, middle, end, and then you're just filling in extra stuff that is ultimately, in your own view, unnecessary. Right? Mm-hmm. In The Hobbit, I don't care about any of this. I don't care about all they've added so much without adding any kind of reason to give a fuck about these people. I don't care about the romance between the elf and the dwarf that the only dwarf without a prosthetic nose is suddenly the handsome one. I don't care. I don't care that they spent millions of dollars on fake noses and weird wigs, fake beards in this thing. I don't care that Ian McKellen was back. I don't care. I don't care. I would rather
Lee Pace was there making everyone horny.
Well, Lee Pace makes everyone horny.
Yeah, Lee
just
Pace,
by existing on Earth.
Yeah, true enough.
Have you watched *Halt and Catch Fire*? What a dreamboat!
Yes. Oh, all day.
all day. But the idea that like that they came back and all that stuff, like I without a doubt will 100% tell you that the Ralph Bakshi animated version from the 70s is a billion times better and a billion times more true to the story and a billion times more enjoyable than watching 12 hours of whatever the fuck the Hobbit trilogy was.
I'm not disagreeing with you to the point that I've actually never even seen the third one, because by the end of Desolation of Smog, I was just like, I don't care anymore. Like,
Desolation of Smog was
because they gave you the most action-packed part of the book,
and it was just like by the time that was over, I was like, I don't even care how this all resolves itself. I've spent so much time watching this to really get nowhere with it. I'm done.
Which by the way, was a chapter in the book.
Yeah.
I needed you know how Frank Herbert originally released Dune because they made him cut so much stuff out with like a handout?
Right.
It was like a little thing that you had to learn, like to Atreides, and what the fuck is Atreides? They gave you a piece of paper to watch a movie. I needed that for the end of The Hobbit, where I was like, who the fuck are these people?
Yeah.
What is that? Do I need to read the book before going into this movie to understand what the fuck you're talking about? Then that's a bad movie.
Yeah,
you know?
and the Silmarillion. Read that too, and all of its names. All right, so we got The Hobbit at number 2. Lisa, what you got?
So my number 2 is The Giver. David, I will, if you want, you can give your reasoning why you thought
the higher.
Just first. Kidding. Okay, so wonderful cast. Absolutely phenomenal cast. You got Meryl Streep, you got Jeff Bridges, you've got Alexander Skarsgård. Like, you know, what more do you want, right? For it to actually follow the storyline, right? Yes. So for starters, they age the kids up, which, like, whatever, not like that big of a deal, except for the part of the fact that the whole thing is that they're coming into themselves as being like 12-year-olds. And whereas here, they're already 16. So it kind of makes a huge difference of when you're 12 to 16. There is a huge thing about this book where everything's in black and white. And then suddenly this boy, Jonas, starts seeing these colors. And that's how he realizes he has this gift and everything like that. The whole thing is that he sees red first. And so he sees red in his friend's hair. In the movie, it still does like this little like flick of the hair, and you can kind of see, oh my gosh, he noticed that it's a different color. Except that the girl's hair wasn't red in the freaking movie. How hard is it to dye the girl's hair or give her a freaking wig? I don't care. It was so stupid. And then they still reference it. They're like, yeah, because, you know, she has red hair. And it's like, but does she? Does she really? I have eyeballs and she doesn't. So yeah, that, and, you know, just like the progression of like his relationship with also this girl and his best friend, like they made it a lot more. They wanted it to be more dramatic in the sense of like, we need these action things. And it was a beautiful story that they just kind of like completely just did away with what the actual premise of the story was. The reason why this kid decides to leave his whole, you know, colony here is an actually like smart decision, and then in the movie he's like decides 1 second to the next, you know. So it was just like really did not do it justice. Dave, your idea?
I think all of the like emotional weight that the book carries is just gone, and it's certainly not for the lack of cast, because you've got some real heavyweights there.
Yeah, when they started dropping names.
Say that again, Mike.
Was it Donald Sutherland?
No,
Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, like when they started
dropping the
Hunger Games.
Yeah, when they started dropping names for it, it was like, shit, they might do The Giver justice.
And Bridges was the one who had been championing this for
like
long
12, 15 years, like a really long time, had been really trying to make that movie and just didn't. And I don't know, David, sorry if I totally interrupted you right now, but I'm going to continue talking anyway.
Yes, and that's how we do it. Welcome.
One of the things that's a huge thing in the book is that when a memory is given away, it's given away. It's just given away. You no longer have that memory. So you're gifting it to somebody else. So he gives.
Well, one is the giver and one is the receiver.
The receiver.
Right.
You're literally giving away these gifts. Nothing. They don't mention that at all. It's like, oh, I gave you this, you know, memory, but now I also still have it too. And that it totally takes away the importance of being able to share that gift with somebody, because this guy is essentially, you know, Jeff Bridges' character is giving of himself to this kid, and nothing, no significance whatsoever. It just takes away all of the importance of
it turns it at a certain point into kind of like that equilibrium thing, you know, where it turns into like an action sci-fi dystopian picture instead of the focus being about the emotional weight of carrying all of the pain and the suffering, but also the happiness and the joy and the love of an entire community. The one thing that the movie did do that I thought, you know, just to give credit where credit is due, it did kind of explore only visually the extent of this community. It's not just one community,
Right.
It's an entire government. It's a nation that practices this sort of thing. And so you do kind of get a sense of that in the movie, where the book only hints at it. So I thought that was kind of cool, but you also don't need that. There's enough of a hint in the novel for you to say, oh wow, this is something kind of pervasive, you know, so that when finally Jonas is maybe sacrificing his life for the baby at the end of this novel, like that means something for him. He understands, you know, the value of life, right? And he starts recalling back to the elephant dying, and you know, some of those like really serious memories. He starts giving those memories to the child, you know, the memories of warmth, memories of fire, memories of family, of love.
Well, that's where he first gets love. He experiences that with what was the kid's name? Gabriel. He experiences that with him, not even with his own family, because like they don't understand that. Whereas this child, he's molding this child into, you know, what should be an actual human. So
So you know what? You want to know how bad that movie is? You're describing a movie that I have been forced to watch twice, and I'm like, elephant. I was like, baby, what are you talking? And I realized, oh my god, like so little bit of this movie retained itself in my brain. And I'm like, oh my god, yeah, I did have to see that movie. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
We've got Alina Vicente says that even from the trailer, she was disappointed.
You mentioned a thing, Lisa, the that they changed it into like where there's this action. There has to be like every so often there's an action. If you read screenwriting books, like there's one called the Save the Cat, and then there's another one that the guys from Rescue from Reno 911 did, called How to Write for Fun and Profit or whatever. Like they literally tell you that if you don't, the people who read these scripts, if there's not some sort of action element every couple pages, every couple scenes, that they literally are like, they will stop. They were like, no, because there's such a formula in screenwriting that like the only way to get any other non-actiony movie made is like through indie film or through mid-budget or low budget. They won't even consider these movies.
Which is unfortunate, because you look at certain like even shows now where it's all about the writing. Like I'm actually watching Succession right now, and the writing is just beautiful, and there's not like these action things. It's all about what the actual story is, you know.
Speaking of the Gatsby, I was watching the Gilded Age that just dropped, like the new Downton Abbey. I have a weird thing about New York history, so I'm like watching that show like, how real is it? Let me Google these people. But it is of that era of like the old money and the new money and all that stuff that that Gatsby was talking about, that there was so much in the Great Gatsby, and it's crazy how much better for novel adaptation TV is.
All right, so we've got The Giver coming in. My number 2 is actually, while we're on this train of taking kids that are supposed to be 12, aging them up to 16, and losing a major point of the book, my number 2 is Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief.
Yeah, you're gonna have to table that, my friend.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so with that one tabled, that's the end of our number 2s. We've got The Great Gatsby with Leonardo DiCaprio, The Hobbit, The Giver, and Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. which is going to take us into our honorable mentions. We disliked them, but they missed it by that much. Dave, what you got for honorable mentions, man?
Okay, so I actually had The Hobbit as an honorable mention. The Scarlet Letter is another honorable mention because it seems like they really didn't understand what that book was about. What the
Easy A
message
was good,
was.
though.
Easy A was fantastic.
Better adaptation.
100%. Yeah. Dune, the original Dune.
I toyed with that one for so long, but when I was a kid, I thought that movie was so dope.
Yeah, here's the thing is it's really not a good movie.
It's not.
It's not a good movie, and it might be an enjoyable one if you can appreciate the camp value of it, which I can, but particularly now because we do have a great adaptation of Dune. You look back on it and you're like, what the fuck? It's just it's upsetting. It's upsetting, especially since there was an adaptation of Dune that maybe would not have been particularly accurate, but Jodorowsky's Dune would have been fucking stellar. And the one that was originally supposed to be my number 4 but got bumped down was The Cat in the Hat.
I love that movie. I know it's a terrible adaptation, but I fucking love that movie.
That's my honorable mention too.
Okay, yeah, like I hate this movie, and here's the thing is I
so hard.
That book terrifies me.
Yeah, it's a horrifying book.
I think that it is the scariest home invasion story ever told. It's like there's the Cat in the Hat, and then there's the strangers. Like that's the list of home invasion stories.
That's such an accurate.
That's so
pairing.
good.
It's such a good pairing of stories.
Yeah,
it's like,
tune into this week's Shiver when we do the book, The Cat in the Hat.
So that's kind of why I moved it down, because I mean ultimately I do like the book Fahrenheit 451 more than The Cat in the Hat. So
all right, Mike, what you got? We'll get to some of Neri's comments here, but what you got, Nick? What you got, Mike?
There's a it's hard because like there's some that I did not know were like. So one of them is Eaters of the Dead. Has anybody read that book, the Michael Crichton?
No.
It's the 13th Warrior with Antonio Banderas playing.
I did not know that one was based on a Crichton book.
Okay, my brother read that book and was like, "Oh, you got to read this. It's like Vikings and then all this shit and a Viking, whatever." And when I saw 13th Warrior, I was like, "Man, I've seen this before. I know this story." And it took me so long to realize they were connected because Eaters of the Dead was written as almost like an odd, like Michael Crichton wrote it as like that's the one you reminded me of,
right?
As like the historical writings of an Arab, an Iraqi Muslim traveling who just wandered into that territory and got kind of taken in by these Vikings, and they're his kind of like it's written with footnotes in a way that almost like a reference book is written, so it's written in such an interesting, almost like non-fiction, which in the story, it's like in the movie, I mean, it's presented as a fish out of water story, and it fits. Like I genuinely like both of them, but they're both told so differently that it's hard to say one's a bad adaptation.
Okay.
The second one that I think that I wanted to point out, and it wasn't enough to make my mind, but there was parts of it that were genuinely, like, in my eyes, failures. The Harry's Potter and the Deathly Hallows, the 7 part 1 and 2. There's just the way the Battle of Hogwarts is done in the movie, and in the way that not even the battle. I will narrow it down to the fight between the battle between Harry and Voldemort. The Voldemort's death in the book is so much more powerful because it's treated like they treat him as just like a man, like he's just a dead body. They show the body and they're like, this is your like kind of like, this is your god, kind of. It shows the thing
this
that
your
he did
king?
not, the thing that he didn't ever want to be portrayed as, which is a mortal human man, is all that's left. And in the movie, they don't do that. The movie, they
Right.
just kind of like, they fly around and then they land, and it's much more cinematic. And then they blend the two faces together because they were, oh my God, yes, the visuals were fucking geniuses. And then when he dies, he just turns
Because
into
Warner
like this.
Brothers is so well known for their special effects.
Warner Brothers is also so known for like forcing their hand on other IP.
Everything,
It's
everything.
insane. But
Yeah.
that element of just that is enough for me to be like, that was wrong. There's a lot of forgivable things, but the death of Voldemort,
Yeah.
the most important death in that, and also like as little details, of course, that can't get put into the movies because it would be like a TV series and have like 30 episodes a season. That alone is enough for me to say that was wrong, like bad.
All right.
There's other stuff, but those are the two big ones.
All right, Lisa, what do you got for honorable mentions?
So yeah, The Cat in the Hat, traumatizing. Yeah, the movie was so I hated it. Oh my God, I still have nightmares about it. Okay, clearly there's something going on at the Ulloa household.
I guess I unapologetically laughed so hard at that movie. God damn.
Oh God, it's terrible.
I remembered another one.
Okay, so then I have Dear John, the Nicholas Sparks book. So they totally changed the ending of that movie, mostly because it didn't test well with audiences. And it's like, that's the point of the book. So there was that. And then Maze Runner Scorch Trials, which was the second one. They kind of made some very liberal changes with it and changed real big. So the whole thing is that, just a quick thing, it's that there was a solar flare that kind of gave these people like a very like, thing that they all got sick and died and stuff like that. So that's why it's called the Scorch Trials. They give them all like a zombie outbreak kind of situation. And it was like,
zombies are so hot right now.
Super. And so, yeah. And then it just kind of, the ending really messed up things for the third book. So it was just a hot mess, as I like to say.
All right. Couple of comments.
I just want to.
Oh yeah, go
I
for
just
it.
want to amend my list because I have to mention the 1993 Three Musketeers, the Disney Three Musketeers movie with Oliver Platt and Chris O'Donnell
and Kiefer Sutherland.
And Kiefer Sutherland, yeah.
That is the best bad movie.
Yes,
that's the thing. It's
good. So much fun to watch, though.
There's a fucking super band of like Bryan Adams and Michael Bolton and all these people singing that All for Love song. It is perfect. The most good bad adaptation.
Yes. See, that's one I couldn't pick because, like you said, like the movie. All right, so a couple comments we got here. Neri, not a fan of Mike's comment about being told to add more.
What else is new?
He says that when the writer creator was told to make up more stuff to the stuff he already created, Mike said, "Fuck you."
For creating more to stuff you originally planned to create in the first place. That's not what I said. That's not what he said. He said they like that really fucks with storytelling and progression and character and all that stuff to like jam more like events in there.
Neri, when talking about aging the actors up, Neri says, to be fair, he was acting like a 12-year-old when he was 35.
That's accurate.
And he's wondering if the 13th Warrior was supposed to be part of the Odyssey, because if not, his senior year
I'm pretty sure this is the same English teacher that told him that Gatsby was garbage because it has nothing to do with the Odyssey. However, it does have something to do with Beowulf.
There we go.
So, again, go ahead and keep trusting that English teacher. Clearly,
Beowulf is also a terrible adaptation.
So,
it was actually
Alex Murray. Alex Murray, who's been on this show a few times now, he actually is writing a one-man show about Beowulf that I've seen like an early one that he did a few years ago. He is obsessed with Beowulf, and he's always commenting about how they.
Did you say you had it on honorable mentions, Dave?
I did, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I did, yeah.
I was not going to mention it in my honorable mentions because I had a feeling it might be your number one. So now that I know it's not. I will say Beowulf is one of mine, but other than Beowulf, my honorable mentions are the ones where, despite being bad adaptations, I really liked the movie, like John Carter from Mars or John Carter of Mars.
That movie is great.
I know, but as an adaptation, it's barely the same thing. But the movie is good.
It was marketed so terribly.
It does a fairly good job of adapting at least the the storyline of a princess from Mars.
Yes. Bonfire of the Vanities, bad adaptation, fun movie. I like that one. This is the one that I think might set Dave over the edge. I like the movie version of Island of Dr. Moreau, even though it is a terrible adaptation. And it's because, and I knew it. I knew that it was going to be one that was going to set him off. But I do kind of enjoy the movie version of that. And then my last one is Paper Towns. They removed so much of the emotional weight in the book Paper Towns. Plus, they got rid of them breaking into SeaWorld, so fuck them. Like, that was an awesome scene in the book. They didn't break into SeaWorld in the movie, so that was going to make my list.
I do actually want to mention, and because Neri's here and he's not going to stop me, a couple dishonorable mentions, movies that
World War Z?
that were better than the book. Neri says it's not the same English teacher. So you had just generally awful English teachers. I'm really sorry for you. All right. Jurassic Park, movie's better than the book, and the book is still fantastic.
Yes.
We've got Deliverance. The book is stellar, and the movie's even better. And the last one is Jaws. As great as the book is, movie's even better.
Okay, and Neri says, he's Beowulf. That's what I meant. My bad. So there we go.
Okay, well, in that case, then.
My one other one is World War Z, but I couldn't put it on my list because as a movie, if it were titled anything else, the movie World War Z is awesome.
Yeah.
It's just as an adaptation to the book, they are nothing the same. You were talking earlier about Eater of the Dead being presented in this non-fictional way. That's the way World War Z was presented as a book.
I've heard that. I've not read the book,
you were
but I've
reading
heard
a history book.
Yeah.
And the movie that was put down, like I said, if you had literally called it anything else, I would be so on board with that movie because I can look at that movie and say, yeah, it's dope, but it's just not World War Z. All right. So that is going to take us into our number ones.
Round one.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back.
Do it! Do it! Come on! Come on!
Sorry.
Number one.
Okay, so my number one, as I said at the top of the show, was the very first one that occurred to me because this is the book series, movie series, probably everything series that I have loved for longest in my life. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, I read my very first James Bond book, and it was Thunderball, and it was pretty good. And I've been a James Bond fan pretty much since even before then because I was watching the movies. So I have never been particularly fond of the Roger Moore era Bond movies. However, there's fun to be had there. There are a few that are just bad. And there are those from that select few that are spectacularly bad, right? And then there's one that is so bad, but is made even worse by the fact that its book is so amazingly good. It is one of the absolute best in the series, and that's Moonraker.
I knew you were going to say Moonraker, but I was waiting for you to mention Live and Let Die.
So Live and Let Die is another one. The book is really, really good, but here's the thing. Is Ian Fleming, somewhat like H.P. Lovecraft, not to the extent of H.P. Lovecraft, is a product of his time, and there's some subtle racism there. So
subtle?
Some subtle racism. Maybe
come on.
It was subtle in the 50s when he wrote. Today it would definitely be overt. Let's just say it wouldn't be called a microaggression. It would just be called an aggression.
Yeah, just racist. We talked about that on Kickflix because in Police Story on Kickflix, another one of the Geek Bro podcasts, there was some oddly misogynistic, weird incel stuff that was happening, and it was, and you have to call it out. You're regardless of the product of its time, it's still weird. It's weird that was in a movie,
and it does suck you out for a moment, and I think that when you are appreciating something that is from a previous time, you have to kind of compartmentalize those things and say, okay, well, this kind of sucks, but either I can accept it for what it is and move past it, or I can't. And Live and Let Die is one of those where like the racism is so pervasive in the book that I have a hard time getting through it. But the novel is considerably better than the movie.
But we're talking Moonraker.
Because Moonraker, there's very little in the way of that racism there. In fact, I don't think there's any of it there. You do get Bond's standard misogynistic dinosaur stuff. The story of Moonraker has nothing to do with James Bond going into space. It has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with laser rifles. It has everything to do with an Englishman who claims to have amnesia from his time before World War I, and not knowing what happened before then, and all of a sudden he is the most rich and powerful man in England. He's worked his way up, very Donald Trumpish, right? And he's all about English nationalism, and he's built this space program and these rockets. And I mean, the culmination of the story is that he's going to fire this rocket. It's going to be a test for this nuclear program that he's basically launching for England. And instead of it being launched somewhere out in the Atlantic Ocean, they realize that the coordinates are right dead center in London. And he's basically going to destroy everything. He works for SMERSH, which is the group before Spectre.
So they're not going to the moon.
It has nothing to do with the moon. It is one of the most action.
Man, those little blue pieces of shit. Those.
It is one of the most action-packed novels I have ever read. It's non-stop. Like my favorite Bond novel is From Russia with Love, and the film is like spectacular. It is really, really good. And this one is almost as good as From Russia with Love. Like I would say it's probably my third favorite Bond novel. And it's just, the movie is just such a fucking letdown.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm thinking, you know what, let me throw on a Bond movie. I might even watch a Roger Moore one. I might put on The Spy Who Loved Me. I might put on even something absurd like A View to a Kill. But I am never, ever putting on Moonraker.
All right. So Moonraker is Dave's number one. Mike, what's the top of your list?
Also, Timothy Dalton, best Bond ever.
I can't disagree.
I'm
my
not
number
disagreeing,
one, right?
honestly.
Everybody leaves him out of the conversation.
I'm not saying he's my favorite.
But
The Living Daylights is a great fucking movie.
It is. Absolutely is.
Okay.
And a really great adaptation.
And the Tuxedo also proved how great at being James Bond it fucking was. But like for his short-lived part, it's like, God, he was so fucking good at James Bond.
Timothy
Anyway,
Dalton is so great. So my number one, and this might be because I'm of a certain age that I connected with the book so hard. And this was definitely one of those. I read the book 3 times. I read the book, listened to the audiobook, read the book again. Like I was just obsessed with the feeling it gave me because it was built on nostalgia, and that's Ready Player One.
Yeah.
Is that on anybody's list?
No, but it's one that I thought
about. The book is super neckbeardy, incel-y in some of the approach that it deals with the relationships in the book.
Yeah.
The world it creates is so full and rich and detailed, and you can put yourself in it and you can imagine what it would be like. You can the nostalgia of the book, the way it explains the reasoning behind the obsession with the 70s, 80s, and 90s is invaluable to the rest of the story. Like you cannot remove it. And the fact that there is no licensing rights that you need to write a book. You don't need, you can talk about whatever, you can write about whatever the fuck you want. So it is full of just what kind of thing serves and some of the things it mentions are just not cinematic in any way. Like there's no drama behind showing someone playing a perfect game of Pac-Man. But in the book, it's written in a way that you are fully engaged with the hours-long process that it would take to do it. And and
what's going on in his mind at the same time, how
100%.
distracted he is with everything that's going on with his friends. His whole life's falling apart as he's playing this perfect game of Pac-Man.
His whole life is like, there's so much to it, and the movie fell so short. I mean, I watched the movie, and it's a fun movie kind of, but it's always this bittersweet feeling of the bittersweet feeling of, this is not what I wanted. And I suffer, and this is one of the things that I always get mad at book people for, where it's like, oh, the book was better. It's like, of course the book was better. Of course the book, you read it and you lived the images in your mind, you tasted and smelled and felt and heard and all the stuff from your brain. You of course it's better. And this is one of those movies where I'm like, fuck. The book people are right.
The book people got
the
this
book
one.
people are or just in general, and look, the book isn't perfect by any means. I refuse to read Ready Player 2 because Ernest Cline has been weird, but the way that you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
There's so much about that guy that it's hard to whatever. But the book was so good for me at the time that I read it, that it connected with me in such a way that I felt the resolution of the story in that book felt very rewarding. I've never felt more rewarded by a book. That the movie literally was like the opposite. Like I felt robbed by the movie. So it's just such a disparity of it may not be like the biggest deal for anybody else, but for me, because it's my mountain.
Yeah,
you got your mountain, I got my mountain. It was just such a disparity between. And I watch that movie now occasionally. I'll put it back on just to get the vibe of what it could have been, and then I'll turn it off like halfway through. And I'm like, okay. And every once in a while I'll get the idea that I'm going to go listen to the audiobook again, but it's narrated by Will Wheaton, and Will Wheaton did the audiobook, and there's something about his voice that I do not want to listen to for the whole book again. You know what I mean? Like, I wish I could get somebody else I wish I could read, like have Siri read me the book, because the Will Wheaton makes choices that I'm like, what? What? Right. That's how you pronounce that.
I kind of feel about that film adaptation the same way that, like, you mentioned The Shining, right? Or another classic that Kubrick adapted to screen, A Clockwork Orange. You know, where so much of the novel was either played up or played down and changed around to create his cinematic vision. And what we're left with is something that is almost entirely different from the written word, but I think still has a like a truth to it, and something that speaks to it.
With Ready Player One, Ernest Cline also wrote the screenplay.
Yeah,
they brought him in to write the screenplay.
That might be why. And Spielberg, I think, is the guy to make that movie. And I wish that he could have made a movie that more closely adapted the novel, because you're right, that 80s and 90s nostalgia, that's really what got me about the book.
So Ready Player One.
Yeah.
All right, what's your number one, Lisa?
Percy Jackson.
There it is.
And here's the thing. You mentioned that there was only, I think, funny, you said something about like there was only one movie. There were two. The first one was
I have a different pick. My number one is
JK.
one where there's only one movie.
Okay. Well, so there were two movies that were made.
They did Sea of Monsters, didn't they?
Yes, which was like so much worse also than the first one. But we're just gonna focus on the first one. So for starters, they also aged up the characters, which again makes a huge impact on the progression of character development that these kids go through, right? It changes just with Percy and the main girl, Annabeth, their relationship. It's formed solely on friendship first, and then it kind of grows into this romantic relationship because they grow up together, you know, and they come into these battles, and they go literally to, the underworld and back. And so like all of these things that kind of build, and just nothing, like it totally ruins that, because you put them at being 16 years old and they're already like Exactly. So they're like, oh my gosh, she's so hot, you know? And then another thing which was super annoying, and it was really funny that it was in The Giver and in Percy Jackson, is her hair in the movie, in the book, is supposed to be blonde. And then, like, in the movie, it wasn't. And they dyed it for the second one. But I'm like, how hard was it to freaking dye this girl's hair? Like, it's something so small, and it bugged the hell out of me.
About the hair.
Yeah, like, well, and I mean,
because it's so small. What does it matter?
And it was my number 3. My number 1 thing. How the fuck do you leave Ares out of this movie?
Oh yeah, well,
like,
yeah.
He's just not in the goddamn movie. The
No.
climax of the book is him dueling with Ares on the beach. And it's dope as fuck that he actually cuts Ares and makes him bleed. It's like a big deal. And Ares is just not in the movie.
No.
Also, I want to say there's like 1 chapter devoted to the fucking pearls in the book, and getting the 3 pearls is like 75% of the movie. They took some of the great things from the movie, completely erased them, and then took minor plot
focused
points
on stupid
and turned them into the whole movie. It was a masterclass in how not to,
100%.
To turn a book into a movie. Like, it would have been my number 1 if it weren't for the deep-seated love I have for what my number 1 is going to be. But it was so bad. And what's amazing about how bad it was all of the elements were there for something that was going to hit perfectly. Like,
well, that's why I'm super happy about them doing the Disney Plus show.
Yes.
So they're doing a show, and I am like so excited because hopefully, well, Rick Riordan had nothing to do with the movies. I remember when the movie first came out, he said, I had no input whatsoever. I do not want to be even associated with them, which that just goes to tell you when the writer of the book is telling you like, this is trash, like I'm just like done with it. Right. So I'm really excited to see what they do with the show. Cause hopefully, because I mean, that's him. He's the one writing it. So
they just, they hit all the wrong points in what made the story great. And it was such a letdown because those books are not only great, but they're like great summer reads because if you're new to the show, Dave and I are teachers. So like during the summer when I actually have time to read for leisure, they're great because you can just get you read 1 book a day and just the series in a week, and it's awesome. Like it's perfect fluff material that should have been easier to thin it out and make a movie and make it something great, and they somehow completely dropped the ball, and I don't understand how.
Yeah, and even the relationship with like the gods and the demigod children, like they didn't, like they weren't allowed to talk to each other, which is like such a huge thing about like, you know, the relationship of, you know, the kids and the gods. And it was like, you know, and you lose all the sass that Percy has in the books. He is like the most like, I don't care, whatever, you know, like they ask him later on, like, what do you want from us? The gods are like, what do you want? And eventually he's like, I just want you to look after your children. Like that's like what he tells them at one
be
point.
dads and moms.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. So it's an awesome pick. It was, like I said, it was my number 2. All right. So we got Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. My number 1 is my pick that they had planned to do the whole series. And I love this book series so much. I was very excited. And I even tried to hedge my bets on how good the movie was going to be, because there are things that happen in the book that I just knew weren't going to play out in the mainstream, but I was ready to see what they did with it. They fucked it up so royally. I was disgusted. My number 1 is The Golden Compass.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I love
that was bad.
Philip Pullman's his Dark Materials. I just like that entire book series is so good, and it's so deep, and it's so mysterious, and there's so many great elements that you're left to explore. It's a book that makes you question things, not only about what's going to happen next in the book, but it makes you question about the way you view things. And what we got out of this movie was so flat. And again, this is one like when you did City of Bones. That's what I was wondering if you were going to pick this. They had planned to do all three, and it just completely fell on its face. The book opens in this really mysterious scene, and they throw you in the shit. They don't take any time. Like, there's no exposition when you read The Golden Compass. When you open up The Golden Compass, she's immediately in there watching the guy like talking about the dust and all of this stuff. And then you turn on that movie and there's this really bland narration, and they spoon feed you all this at the top. And then just the choice of which action scenes they decided to go with and which ones they ramped up and which ones they put down didn't make any sense to me. How do you fuck up a movie that's got a talking polar bear in armor?
I will say the polar bear getting his jaw knocked off is still pretty badass.
Yeah,
it took forever to fucking get there.
Yes,
but it was just the TV show.
Yes. Now there is a level of redemption to Hollywood's view of his Dark Materials, because the TV show has been, I mean, knocking it out of the park. The TV show is doing incredible, but I'm not looking at that. I'm looking at this one fucking movie that we got that they spent like $200 million making just to completely get rid of the fact that they were going to make the rest of the trilogy. And honestly, like when it was over, I didn't want to see what else they could have done with it, because I didn't want to watch them ruin Amber Spyglass and Subtle Deck. Like, I didn't want to watch them ruin all those things. I'm glad the rest of those died on the floor, because there was such a deep sense of disappointment in this, because if you've never read those three Philip Pullman books, they are deep. Those books were written on the surface level to be fun and enjoyable, but as you read them, there are a lot of like theology things that feed into that. And by, Subtle Dagger, they're not subtle at all, which is funny enough. But there's so much to be pulled out of that. And when they turned it into a movie, they just flattened everything, and they were just trying to put butts in seats of something that would be cinematic, and it just did not play out well. I was so utterly disappointed in The Golden Compass. I couldn't believe that somebody, I don't know, whoever decided that there should be $200 million spent on that thought it was a good adaptation, because it was hot trash, just a flaming dumpster fire.
And I mean, 200 million is what they spent on the movie itself.
Right.
Its marketing budget was probably also another 200 million.
Yeah.
Because that was a pretty star-studded cast.
Yeah.
They had Daniel Craig hot off of Casino Royale. Like, I remember being so excited to go see that, because I was really feeling Daniel Craig. I was like, fuck, that's James Bond, man. And I haven't read the book, so I'm or any in that series, and that did not make me want to.
Yeah, God, dude, read the book. So, or even if you don't feel like sitting down to read the book, the HBO Max series is doing a great job with it. Like, it is there with all of the with most of the things that made the book great. But that movie, oh God, it.
Did we talk about? I'm sorry, I had to step away for a second. Did we talk about how this was also the time where, like, they had started diving, like, so there was a period of time when all these young adult books were coming out, made popular by like Twilight and the Hunger Games and all that stuff, and people were buying properties without them really being finished or popular, or like the Golden Compass books. And then that's when they started making these movies, whether or not they were going to be popular. Like, I think the fucking Allegiant, what was the Divergent book?
Oh, Divergent.
There was, like, you can name them all. The Narnia books also, like, they totally fizzled out at the end. Like, no one was going to see Prince Caspian. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure you did, but yeah, but the reality of it is that they all kind of diminish in value. And I think that a lot of good properties were victims of other properties' failures, and I think Golden Compass was a big one, because Golden Compass, I did not read the books, and if I haven't read the books, when I go see the movie, it's just a good movie, and I enjoyed it, and I liked it. Like Stardust, Did you see Stardust?
I did.
I
Not see
loved
Stardust.
Stardust.
That's an adaptation too, but I've never read the book, so to me, it's just a great movie. Robert De Niro plays a fucking sky pirate who some foppy sky pirate. That's awesome, and but
I love your love for the word foppy, by the way. That's the second. That's the second time
What
this
was the other one?
episode. When you were talking about Lestat, you referred to him as foppish.
They are.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I'm not saying it's the wrong word. I'm just saying you're the only guy I've ever heard use it in context regularly.
I'm nailing it. No, but the point of it that kind of like, you can't look at these in a vacuum. You have to look at what was all happening around them, like The Giver and like other stories. Like, I think The Golden Compass, for people who had not read the books, that movie isn't as bad as it could have been in terms of like the book people. This is where you start getting the book people again.
Yeah, no, and I
I'm not going to disagree with you.
Yeah, no,
I
know
it's and it leaves you hanging, and there's like this weird like Nicole Kidman's evil monkey, and like I love all, but like the world that it creates is more often like bigger. Like I was telling my girlfriend this, that there's so many times you're watching a movie or TV show and they're doing all of these like nostalgia shows, like the new Sex and the City show and all of these shows that are trying to reach into the past to, hey, remember when you love this thing? We got this, we're going to do more of it. The side characters are always, to me, way more interesting. And that's what I feel like these book adaptations that get wrong, where they're focusing on like something that they think this is what you want, but ultimately it's nowhere near as interesting as some of the side shit, so they focus on the wrong scenes in these books that could have made them more engaging or more entertaining, and now with limited series on streaming, they're getting so many more opportunities to do that. Have you watched the Wheel of Time series?
I have not yet.
No.
It sucks. And they fucking missed. They are missing. Like, they're still doing this. They have all the time in the world to tell a better story, and they still fucking miss. Like,
Let's be honest. Let's be honest, though. They're not working with like grade A material.
It's not the best, but they're super popular and they're engaging. Don't try to do something different with it. Go find some of these book nerds that love fucking D&D.
Fucking nerds.
I'm one of them, man.
I know.
I'm about to start a D&D. I stream D&D on Saturdays. It's at 7:00 Eastern time on the D&D Club. All of these nerds that have these books that they love, these like the Wizard of Earthsea, all the Ursula K. Guin books, the Ursula K. What's her name? Le Guin.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? The Wizard of
Yes.
Earthsea. All of those series and all that stuff. Like, these are super fantasy, like tangible fantasy worlds that are fully fleshed out. Get that first and then start telling the story that's in the book. Like, build the world. That's how all of these fantasy things work. There's fucking maps in the beginning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
like,
and that's what so often it's just like because they're just trying to get it into a movie. Like I said, it's just like, here's a bunch of exposition because we've only got one movie and we need you to understand. And it just doesn't always work out. But
when they start the crawl at the beginning with all of the word, you're like, oh fuck.
Oh jeez.
They did
all
not
right.
do this
So
right.
our number ones were Moonraker, Ready Player One, Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, and The Golden Compass. Which means we've got two repeats as we get into what the final mountain's going to be. The Giver and Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief are definitely making the mountain. So we've got two spots left open. What do you guys think?
Whose were those repeats?
There was Lisa had both of those, and then I had the Lightning Thief, and Dave had the Giver.
Yeah, so I'm okay with this. I'll let you all fight that one out. I got two of mine on there.
As far as, like I said, it's like if we do the thing where we're looking at other people's picks, I think that Queen of the Damned pick is really good. Like I said, it didn't make mine because of the fact that they jammed the two books together, but it is just, it's maybe that makes it doubly bad, because it's a bad adaptation of either book.
The attempt, it was flawed from the attempt. Like, why would you jam both of these novels into one story? And call it something else.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't say it was inspired by. Don't say it's based on. Say it was, make it something else. But
all right, so we'll toss Queen of the Damned up there, which means we've got one spot left. What do you guys think?
What was the oh god, I can't remember what the picks were.
So we had Fahrenheit 451, The Da Vinci Code, Girl on the Train, Lovely Bones, City of Bones, Congo, Great Gatsby, Hobbit, Moonraker, Ready Player One, and Golden Compass.
I would like to say Congo because I actually do unabashedly love how bad that movie is. I love it.
But you're admitting that
Amy
it's
Want
bad.
Raindrop Drink is still a thing that is stuck in my head.
I kind of like that movie, but I like it for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
So you're admitting that it's a bad movie?
No, it's an awful movie.
Well, then
it's one of those. It's bad, but I love it. I mean, it's just so funny when you watch it and you see the effects and
and I guess
monkeys.
That's the thing. It's not supposed to be funny, like ever. Just Congo was just nothing about Congo was supposed to be funny. That's why it's so bad.
I like that. Congo.
So, are we good with Congo?
Works for me.
Yeah.
Works for me.
All right. So the final mountain of our worst novel to movie adaptations is Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, The Giver, Queen of the Damned, and Congo. So that's
what a shit show lineup that would be for a movie night.
That is a hellacious, like 6 to 9 hours of movie watching. That is just bad. Yeah. So if you've enjoyed tuning in to us today, make sure you head over to geekbro.net where you can catch not only this show, but you can also catch Dave and I doing Shiver wherever we're live every Wednesday night on YouTube and Facebook. And this week, Wednesday, 9/8 Central. This week, we are continuing our romance series through the month of February as we do My Bloody Valentine.
Absolutely.
A classic slasher. Mike, you got anything going on you need the people to know about? What's that D&D podcast you're talking about?
Oh, yeah. I stream a D&D show that we're doing on the D&D Club, TTRPG Academy and all that stuff. We do it's really, really fun. It's based in the critical role world of Exandria. And that show that just came out, Legend of Vox Machina, it's based on their D&D world. We're playing in
That's
it.
Will Wheaton's thing, right? Like
no, it's the voice actors that play D&D together, Matt Mercer and all of them. I do that on Saturdays at 7. And then Kickflix on the geekbro.net. We have Kickflix with me, Neri, and Jeff. Happy birthday, Jeff, by the way.
Oh yeah, happy birthday, Jeff
Mercacini. And I don't know what's up in the lineup. I think we did Police Story and the Ninja Turtles was the last. We did TMNT, the original 1990 movie, and we did Police Story, that Jackie Chan 1985, the Jackie Chan stuntacular.
And that final stunt, him going down that pole with the lights bursting, is I never got tired of that.
That movie is interesting in the way that it does not end, and we talk about it on the show. Where
they just keep cutting back to it.
Yeah, they show it 4 times.
Yeah,
but no. Literally, the ending of the movie is him emptying a gun at somebody, and then it just freeze frame. That's the end of the movie, and it is wild. But it's rife with 80s Hong Kong fashion sense. It's beautiful. It's so good.
You guys need to do Project A also. That I think that might even be better than Police Story.
If you met at kickflixpod@gmail.com and you can get your suggestions on the wheel, they are all chosen at random. Trust me.
That's okay. I just
week.
Quick little side note: if you guys are doing TMNT, the 1991, my Uncle Bobby is the voice of Michelangelo in that movie.
No
way.
Yeah, well, he's like my uncle once removed. He's like my dad's uncle. But
sure.
He's the voice of Michelangelo.
Can we talk to him? Can you hit him up? Can we talk to him? I'd love to talk to him.
He's done a bunch of voice stuff. He was Michelangelo in that. He was Silver Surfer in that Marvel
cartoon?
Superheroes Go cartoon, where they're like the little action figures. Anyway, so there's my one tie to fame. Lisa, do you have anything you need to promote?
I'm just happy to be included.
Hey, you did great. And I mean, you've got 2 of your picks made the final mountain, right?
Yeah, what a great way to, start off.
So make sure you head to geekbro.net. You can find Kickflix. You can find Shiver. You can find Mt.Geekmore. We've got What's Up, Bro, A Dose of Ellie, Comedy Fitness, Crimacopia. There's a little something for everybody over there at geekbro.net. A lot of them streaming live. You got to pick if you're going to watch live, you got to pick between Shiver and What's Up, Bro. We're not trying to grab anybody, but we're just saying there is a little bit of friendly competition there. So we appreciate all of you for listening. listening. If you're just listening, make sure you tune in Mondays. Follow us on all the social medias at Mt.Geekmore, and we'll let you know when we're recording and what the topic's going to be. We'd love for you to chime in on the comments. Neri and let's see, Stein was listening at one point, and
Alina Garcia
Vicente. We appreciate you guys chiming in. Thank you so much for listening. That's how lists are made.